Good afternoon, and thank you for attending our webinar today covering integrated planning with Vena's Excel interface and your ERP software. Just a few housekeeping notes before we begin. We are recording today's session. Everyone registered will receive an email with a link to the on-demand version and a copy of today's presentation slides within the next few days. Today's session will run for a total of 60 minutes, and we have included time for Q&A at the very end. Those attending today who submit a question will be entered into a draw to win a $100 or £100 gift card following the webinar. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A panel on your GoToWebinar console, and we will address them toward the end of the presentation. If for some reason we don't have the time to address all questions in today's live event, please do be assured that we will follow up with you directly following the webinar. My name is Jonathan Smythe. I've been with Shea Global for 10 years and have a background in production and commercial management. I also have 20 plus years of providing IT solutions to blue chip companies, more specifically around the Microsoft Dynamics product family within manufacturing and distribution companies. I'm excited to introduce our partners, Vena, the authors of some fantastic functionality which helps with corporate performance management. A little bit about Shea. Our vision is that we believe every business has the potential for excellence. We challenge customers to look beyond the status quo and to make their business better. At Shea Global, our passion is guiding customers to achieve business excellence. Our team has many years of experience and expertise helping our customers in a variety of different industries. We are an essential service according to the definition of the province of Ontario. We have and we will continue to stay open to service our clients as we are a global provider of ERP, CPM, BI and demand-driven technologies and solutions focused on transforming supply chains. Shea Global supports organizations in 25 countries from offices in Canada, the US, the UK, India and the Philippines. Whilst most of our projects are within the manufacturing and wholesale distribution space, we also focus in areas such as aerospace and defense, automotive, consumer goods, electronics, fashion, food and beverage, machinery and equipment, medical devices, chemicals, plastics, rubber, and pharmaceuticals. I have pleasure in introducing Ian Preston to you today. Ian is the Vice President of Sales at Vena Solutions. Ian has a whole career experience in corporate performance management, starting with heading up financial control in a major electrical engineering business, followed by a number of years in the drinks industry, starting in brewing and gravitating to international wines and spirits. This was followed by a step into Hyperion software, followed by Business Objects and then SAP. In 2012, he established the UK presence of Adaptive Insights, building up the business over 5 years. After a couple of brief spells resuscitating a couple of much smaller businesses, the chance came in early 2019 to establish Canadian CPM vendor Vena into the UK and EMEA markets. Vena is the newest global player in CPM, making fast inroads into the market with its Excel-fronted application suitable for both large and small businesses. I would also like to introduce Andrew Chubb, a senior solutions consultant with Vena. Andrew is a qualified accountant with over 15 years of experience implementing solutions that help to streamline and improve key business activities such as financial planning and analysis, financial close, and quote to collect. He's now helping organizations understand how they can leverage the Vena Performance Platform to address corporate, financial, and operational planning and modeling needs. In terms of Vena Solutions and the relationship between Vena Solutions and Shea Global, Vena is a leader in the mid-market for CPM software or corporate performance management. Shea Global was seeking to address a functional gap in some of our ERP offerings, and we reviewed several different options in the marketplace. Vena beat all of the competitive solutions reviewed on functionality versus price, and the Vena team demonstrated real expertise and knowledge in the areas of CPM, forecasting and budgeting. So for us, it was a bit of a no-brainer. The Vena CPM solution integrates very nicely with Microsoft Office 365. And with that, it gives us the potential for rapid user adoption because of the familiar interface. Naturally, also, we had synergies with Vena, with us having offices in Toronto, Canada, and the UK. So what I'll now do is pass over to the guys from Vena to take us through some of the exciting solution.
Jonathan, thank you very much for such a kind introduction, and I will give us a brief overview of Vena and then pass to Andrew to give you a demonstration of Vena. So Vena is a privately held Canadian company headquartered in Toronto, founded in 2011, got over 350 employees globally and over 800 customers globally as well. So we're a big organization and we've got a lot of spread around the world. Being a SaaS company, we have to have data centers. We've got data centers in North America and in Ireland for the EU. We've got full support and implementation in the major markets that we have in North America and EMEA. So we tend to focus in those two areas. It's a software as a subscription model. So of course it's subscription licensing, so easy to engage with, easy to acquire. And we're a financially stable organization. The start of last year, we just got another significant slug of VC capital into the business, which is helping us along our way. So we really do all of the things that the FP&A team in any organization, large or small, would want to do. So in relation to things that might have happened in the past, we're good to provide tax provisioning, financial close management, consolidation, reconciliation, allocations, things like that. So those are all sort of historically based activities. If you look at things that might be sort of more present to you in your business, then reporting comes to mind. Very strong in regulatory reporting. Management dashboards are a must for anybody. And then when you look to the future, then this is where we come into our own with budgeting, planning, forecasting, scenario modeling, and you can run all of these things and run them easily within your organization. So if we look briefly at the Vena platform and look at it in relation to what finance does in their organizations, then you've got things like financial close that finance gets involved in, general ledger, ERP reporting, and financial planning and analysis. The general ledger in that world will give you reporting. You've got maybe other tools that might give you financial planning and analysis, and there might be another set of tools that give you financial close reconciliation. But really, only Vena can give you all of these aspects of what FP&A are wanting. So plans, budgets, financial close, and reporting, all in one package. So very easy to consume. We'll have a very quick look at how Vena works, but Andrew will take us into this in a lot more detail. So Vena, as I said before, it's a cloud application. It has to interface with all of the source systems of the world, and of course that's why we partner with Shay for Microsoft Dynamics 365 in particular, but also you may need to interface with CRM or HR systems. Vena has an Excel user interface, which is very easy for users to engage with. It's just like the friendly Excel that they know and love. Excel is used for reporting and analytics, dashboarding, things like that, as well as being the user interface. But Vena is an application, so it comes with all the security that you want, all the user collaboration and the database access that you would require. And the functionality that really this gives you then is a whole range of what-if modeling, auditability of every data point in the database, the ability to drill through to data so that we can pull transactional data out of Dynamics 365, bring it into the Vena world and analyze it alongside plans and budgets. So a lot for you to play with there and to keep the business satisfied. Now, we all know about Excel hell, but what Vena does is it gets you out of Excel hell. So a lot of the things that people look down on Excel for have been eradicated in the way that Vena uses Excel. And then in addition, the Vena application gives you workflow automation, version control, audit trails, all the security you want and the scalability that you want, as well as the complex financial modeling that you want. So actually, it's a win-win on all fronts. And then we will look at the customers worldwide. As I said before, over 800 customers worldwide. These are in all industries, so we're really not focusing on any one industry. We're spread the planning and budgeting task is equally valid across all industries. We just need to understand the particular techniques and language used in insurance versus those techniques and languages that are required in retailing, for instance. But that in our organization, we've got covered across all of the customers that we've dealt with. So now I'm just trying to get our slides to move on. All right. And now what we'll do, we'll move to Andrew Chubb, and Andrew's going to give us a demonstration of Vena.
Great, thanks very much, Ian. So for the demo today, I'm logged in as Frank Jones, and Frank Jones is an example of a user who is not just a contributor to a number of processes in Vena, but also manages a number of those processes as well. And so let's start off here with the manager view. Now, what you get with Vena is a very powerful workflow and process capability, as we'll see in a moment. And in this particular example, there are a number of areas where we're running processes using Vena. So we're going to focus today on the FP&A side, but you can be using Vena in other areas such as individual compensation management, in terms of things such as statutory consolidations. There's various different use cases throughout the business, but I guess the rule of thumb there is wherever you're using Excel, you could be using Vena. So it's not just a point solution for FP&A, for example. But we're going to focus on that area anyway today, and in particular, we're going to be looking at the 2021 annual budget. Now, when I click on that, what I can see is what the 2021 annual budget looks like at a top level. And as I mentioned a moment ago, you've got the ability to define your processes and workflow any way that you want in Vena. So here we can see an example. We've got various different aspects of this process flow. So over here on the left-hand side, a starting point is to be importing, for example, and validating our data from Dynamics. So just on that, in terms of getting data in from Dynamics, for example, we can automate that whole process for you. So for example, you may want to schedule your imports from Dynamics, and maybe that runs overnight. Maybe it runs several times a day when you're at the month end. You can run it ad hoc. But the point there is it's automated. Now, you can also get data into Vena by just kind of manually uploading a CSV file if you wish. But most of our customers, vast majority, do actually automate the import process. So we can be importing your trial balance. We could be importing your purchase ledger detail, sales ledger detail. It doesn't really matter as far as we're concerned. But also we can be importing data from other data sources as well. So essentially, Vena is data agnostic. So do you wish to bring in data from a CRM, such as Salesforce? Do you maybe want to bring in data from a data warehouse? If you're planning to do labor planning, as we can see over here, we may want to bring in data from our payroll system. But the point is that we can automate the import of data from those various different systems. And at the end of the day, data is just data for us. It's not just about financial data. It's about bringing in data from all over the business that may sit in sales, in marketing, and bringing it into a single platform where we can start to do the modeling and start to do the analysis as well. But back over here to the left-hand side of the process, so once we've kind of imported our data, we've reviewed it, we may then want to go in and take a look at our drivers, our assumptions. Now, again, as far as we're concerned, a driver, an assumption is anything you want. So it could be financial in nature, it could be non-financial. So it's going to be entirely up to you. And those drivers and those assumptions can be set at any level in the organization. So for example, you may have certain drivers that may be at the country level. So when you take things like payroll taxes in the UK, for example, there's a national insurance rate that's common across the entire country, whereas in the US, there are payroll taxes or state taxes. We can set those drivers and assumptions at a customer level, at a regional level, at a project level. It's entirely up to you in terms of where you want to put those drivers and assumptions. And then, of course, we're using those drivers, those assumptions to generate our budgets and our forecasts. And how we use those assumptions and drivers is, again, entirely up to us. We could have very simple drivers like inflation or percentage increase in sales drivers. So, for example, take last year's numbers increasing by 20%. They can be as simple or as complex as you need them to be. Also, as part of this whole process of looking at our drivers and assumptions, we do go through a review and approval process. So here we've got a number of users maybe that are reviewing those drivers. If they get rejected, they go back to the originators. But once they're approved, we can then move on to the main thrust of the budget, which includes areas like revenue, labor, expense planning, as well as balance sheet and cash flow planning. And then once we've got through those, we can then move on to our allocations and then create our report packs. But this is a true process flow. So essentially, there are going to be certain tasks that users can't do because other tasks need to be completed first. Just briefly to drill into one of these areas in a bit more detail. So here we have expense planning. We can see some sub-processes under there, so various different departments and cost centers. We're going to be focusing today on London. So there we can see the London expense budget. And if I just open it up or double click on it, what I can see is Frank is one of the owners along with Lynn, but we also have Gwen to help out. And we also have the ability to attach watchers to a task as well. So as the name suggests, they can actually go in, they can take a look at these templates, and we'll talk about those in a bit more detail in a moment, but they just won't be able to make any changes. We can put in instructions as well as attach supporting documentation, and also set due dates as well. So in this case, we've got a smart date, so 30 working days after the task has started, it needs to be completed, but we've got a couple of other options on there as well. So essentially what we're doing is we are giving our contributors as much information as needed to get on with the task at hand. Then back down here to the templates, so we've got a CapEx template and an OpEx planning template, and we'll go into the OpEx planning template in a moment. But the key thing to point out here is an actual big difference between standalone Excel and using Vena. Now, if you take standalone Excel and we've got this OpEx planning template, we may have lots of different versions of this template floating around the business. So we've got 9 different cost centers. There may be 9 different files that we have to update, maintain, roll forward, send out, try and bring back, together again and consolidate our submissions. A lot of overhead around that whole process. But in Vena, it's a single maintained template. People are going to go into the OpEx planning template, for their various different departments and cost centers. In this particular example, they're going to be putting in their various different numbers. Once they save the data is automatically consolidated. It's automatically aggregated up to that top level. There's nothing else that we need to worry about. So that's something that the Vena engine is doing for us. Also, any currency conversions. So in this case, London is in sterling. The group currency is US dollars. There's also a sub-consolidation point in euros. All of that is done for us. We don't need to worry about that. So the whole overhead of managing the templates and sending them out, that all goes away with Vena. So you can define these processes the way that you want. It's entirely up to you. It's very much a case of drag and drop, click and point. There's nothing technical in order to create these processes. Another important area is around how we actually monitor and control what's going on. So, again, with standalone Excel and even in some other solutions, CPM solutions out there, it's very difficult to monitor, where we are in the process, who started a submission, who submitted it, that type of thing. But the out-of-the-box status tracker, we can see a list of all our various different tasks, their current status. So we have all the tasks with their different owners. And if there's anything that's overdue, it will be highlighted up here, and then we can see those tasks that are running late, and of course try and get them closed out and get the budget back on schedule. We can also send out notifications from Vena as well. So when we kick off the budget process, in this case, everyone involved gets an email. When I submit something to be reviewed, the reviewers get an email saying it's been submitted. They reject it, I get an email saying it's been rejected. Even reminders, so perhaps maybe in 3 days' time, I need to do my revenue plan. I'll get a reminder from Vena. So that's a very high-level overview there in terms of how we can control and monitor a process in Vena. Again, remember, today we're focusing on the annual budget, but this is applicable to any process that we may be running in Vena itself. So if we now then move to the contributor view. So typically, this is what your end users will see when they log in to Vena. And essentially, it is a list of various different tasks. I can see straight away anything that's overdue. So of course I might want to kind of get that particular task completed, particularly as it's very late. I've got my current list of tasks that I need to be working on. I've then got my allocations, which are coming soon. So that's a little way down the process flow. So I'm not actually going to be able to do anything on that yet until other tasks have been completed first. And then view only, so things like reports, but also once I've completed a task and then submit it to the next stage in the process, it will move down here to view only. So for example, when I've done my expense and CapEx plan, I've submitted it to the next stage, that task will move down here. I can still open up the templates. I can still see what I've submitted, but I won't be able to make any changes to that unless it gets rejected and pushed back down to me. So let's take a look at the London expense budget. As we saw a moment ago, we have a couple of templates that are attached to it. We're going to go into the OPEX planning template here. So let's just open it up. So now we move into the familiar realm of Excel. But the one thing just to, again, stress here is that Excel is essentially the UI. It's the way in which users interact with the data that sits in Vena. This is on my desktop, so this is my kind of standard Excel, if you like. What we have here is an add-in, and that add-in provides a live link to the Vena database. Hence why at this point I'm presented with essentially options in terms of what department, what year, and what scenario I actually want to work on. So just briefly then, in terms of the departments, now Vena is a role-based solution. So essentially, I'm only going to see, for example, the departments you want me to see in this list. So essentially, using roles, using responsibilities, we control what our users can see and do within the solution. Now, there could be 50 other departments. I'm just not going to see them in that list because, yeah, my profile prevents me from seeing them. We can see there's a hierarchical nature to this particular dimension here, this structure. So as we mentioned a moment ago, that aggregation, that consolidation is all automatic. That's something that Vena is doing. Moving on to year. So here we have the year I'm going to work on. Now, in terms of from a calendar perspective, do you plan down to hour, day, week, month, quarter? That is entirely up to you. Do you plan just a year ahead or 100 years ahead? Again, you define your planning horizon. And then in Vena, we have a concept of scenarios or versions. So in this case, we can have, or we can select from a number of different scenarios that are available, but the number of scenarios you have, what you call them, who has access to them, that is all controlled centrally. And then we can start to compare these scenarios with each other as well. You're also going to have a scenario which is going to hold your actuals data, so from Dynamics, for example, or from any other systems, and then you can start to compare your actual performance to what you expected. And we'll see an example of that in a bit. But let's just leave the options as they are. We're now going to be basically retrieving the data per those selectors that we chose there. And because this is Excel, what you're looking at here is totally customizable. So essentially, you are able to tailor your input templates and your reports to suit your organization. In many cases, particularly a lot of tools that are web-based, they provide, and they're very good, but they provide web-based grids, for example, sheets that are very rigid. And what tends to happen is, of course, people go back to Excel because their mind is wired in a certain way and they like Excel. And then they go back to the planning tool and type the numbers in. But because, as I mentioned, we use Excel as our UI, it means you tailor Vena to work the way that you want. We can even take your existing templates and incorporate them into Vena as well. Because, you may have spent a number of years, creating all your various different model templates. People are very comfortable with them. You don't have to throw those away. We can take those and bring them into the Vena environment. So other than the fact that you pick up your template in a slightly different way, once you've opened up the template, it may look exactly the same as it did before you moved on to Vena. So that really helps with user adoption. Now, in terms of inputting data into a template, well, we use Excel as a UI. So if I want to start putting in some numbers, I do it in exactly the same way as I do in Excel today. Do I want to do a calculation? Well, I don't need to learn a new formula language. I'm using a formula language that I'm very familiar with. Do I want to drag things across? I can do that. Control C, Control V, all the various different shortcuts that you use today in Excel are still available. All of the formulas that you use today in Excel are also still available because we're using Excel as our UI. But I may not want to put in a number in every single month. Maybe I want to do some breakback. So I can do that. Going up to the spread option, I can change a value, I can use prior year values, maybe even use another account as a basis for my spread. So maybe there's some seasonality. Maybe this advertising is linked to, I don't know, maybe the number of employees we have or customers we have or whatever, whatever it may be, we can decide what we want to use there to do those various different spreads. So, here is very much a bottom-up example, but you've got that breakback. You've also got the ability to do top-down forecasting as well. So top-down, bottom-up, a hybrid, that's entirely up to you. Now, at some point, I'm going to want to save my data. So up here, we have our add-in, and we've got various different options, and we'll take a look at these in the demo today. But we have a save option here, so I'm just going to save my data. Now, in this particular instance, I am presented with a validation. So I've exceeded the threshold of 20%. So maybe group has said, for 2021, we don't want your budget to be more than 20% than what it was last year. Now, this is a soft check, so I can continue to save, so let's just do that. But there are also hard checks where I won't get the option to say yes or no, I just get okay. I have to go away and fix the problem before I can then save my data. But behind the scenes, that validation is just based off of a true or false calculation using standard Excel formulas. So what that means is you can define any number of validations. What it also means is you can enforce best practice in terms of keeping the data as clean as possible, as early as possible in the process. Because wherever we are relying on users manually putting stuff in, they could make mistakes. Maybe I put in 1 million instead of 10,000. Maybe you want me to manually allocate something for whatever reason, and it doesn't tie up to 100% or to the number that should be allocated. Now, those are all the different examples where we can put in validation. Now that we've saved the data, Vena has automatically aggregated and consolidated the data for us. So I could run an income statement at the group level in the group currency of US dollars, and I would see it now reflecting these numbers that we put in. There's nothing else that we need to do. We also create an audit trail. So whenever we make a data change, it's audit logged. So I can go up here to my drill saves option. I can see a history of that cell. So we can see so I'm based in the UK, so at 1657, Frank went in to this template and saved that value of 10,000. But what's also quite useful is the ability to compare the data at a kind of template level. Particularly, in budgeting and forecasting, there's a lot of to and throwing of the data. I submit something, you ask me to change it. Might do that several times. As the reviewer, I just want to make sure you've only changed the things that I asked you to change. So I can very quickly validate that by using the audit trail feature. So for example, maybe I want to compare, let's see the data today at 1543 and compare it to 1131. Vena is now going away. It's just going to work out the differences between those 2 points in time. And then it's going to highlight to me those various different changes. We can also use this feature here to save data back to previous points in time. So maybe I was in Vena yesterday and I come in this morning and I think, oh no, I shouldn't have made those changes. I can use this process to bring back the data prior to those changes and then just save. And I've essentially set the data back to that previous point in time. But you will still have the full audit trail there available. A question about actuals. So, we're loading in our actuals from Dynamics. So let's just expand out the columns there. And we can see we've got actuals up to September 20. And what I can start to do is start to drill into the detail. So again, up here in our drill, but selecting transactions this time, I can see the transactional data that we've loaded into Vena. So here we have a whole bunch of various different invoices that have been imported from the payables ledger. So as I mentioned earlier on, it's not just about bringing in trial balance data, level data. It's about bringing in transactional data from the sub-ledgers as well. If you're looking at doing reconciliations, you could even bring in things like the bank statements and so on. But the point there is I can do that in Vena. I can very quickly interrogate the numbers. I can understand exactly what's going on with those numbers there. And also what's quite useful is, here we've only got 4 invoices, but there could be, maybe 10,000 transactions that we've just pulled back on that drill through. What I may want to do is understand, well, where is our biggest spend? Is there some anomalies going on there? And what's quite useful is the ability to use the ideas functionality that's now available in Excel. Because we are very much tightly integrated into Excel, you get to use all these nice features. So using AI, Excel's gone away and it's analyzed those numbers for me. Now, of course, in this particular instance, there's only 4 transactions. But again, just imagine there's a whole bunch of various different, tens of thousands of transactions, and we just want to understand what's going on with that data there. So I can very quickly kind of do that analysis there. So back over here with the template, let's just get rid of that. There we go. So back over here, the other thing to mention is that when we load in our October 20 actuals, we don't have to come into the templates and manually roll them forward. That's all done centrally. So literally 31st of October, load in the actuals. Next day, when I log in on the 1st of November to do my reforecast, basically the template's going to be all automatically rolled forward. Just a few other things to talk about here in terms of, this is a fairly controlled template. I'm only able to update certain things. The other thing I should have mentioned is any cells that are white in this instance, they are protected. So things like the actuals, but some other calculations down here. So there is control in the in this template. But what happens if I want to add a bit more detail? So again, this is a good example where people go back to Excel or their own workbooks and create their kind of offline workings and then come back into the planning tool and type the numbers in. But with Vena, we can actually help with that because I can do various different things. I can go in here and say, actually, I want to add in my own workings. So I can say, let's call that, and I can spell it right. Andrew's workings. I've inserted a tab. Let's just put in some numbers here. I won't spend too long on this, but let's do that. Let's maybe do a quick calculation on that. So take that. You get the idea. I'm doing my own workings. I could have multiple different tabs in here. Maybe I want to do, use any of these other formulas, but let's just do the auto sum. And now I've done my workings. What I can do is go back here and say, actually, I want that to equal that. That workings tab doesn't change the central template. That hasn't changed. We're just going to save a version of this template in Vena that now includes that workings tab. And it's specific to the slice of data that we're working on. So if I went to a different department, I wouldn't see that workings tab. Other things that we can do is maybe split out our consulting fees. Now, typically people want to right click and they want to do the insert. And you can see there I can't do that. Well, I can, but I just do it in a slightly different way using line item details. Let's do a multi-insert there. And insert 2 rows. Let's call these anything that, oops, again, if I can spell correctly, anything we want. Let's start to put in some numbers. Let's take that and just divide it by 2. But you can see it still adds up to the account level. So we're not breaking anything, and I can't override that formula. So it's just a standard Excel formula, but that's something that Vena has put in. So you can give your users flexibility to go in and add their own kind of customizations, if you like, into these templates, but do it in a controlled way. We can also add commentary as well. So if I want to, I can put in a comment here, and that comment may actually flow through to the last mile reporting in Word and PowerPoint. You can also add attachments, so I can upload and attach a document in here as well if I wish. So just a few other areas to look at in terms of maybe driver-based approach. So here we've been putting in our numbers manually, but driver-based is always a good place to be. So up here we've got our salary and wages. Again, I can't actually change that, but what I can do is go to drill saves. I can see a history of that particular number. I can also see it's coming from another template in Vena called labor planning, and I can now jump to that template. Because with Vena, what you get is essentially connected modeling. So all your various different aspects of your model can be connected. And another example of that is, your income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. They're all going to be plugged into everything that we're doing, whether it's revenue planning, CapEx, and so on. Now I can jump into this template and view it because I have access to do it. There is, again, remember, security. So if you don't want me to see this level of granularity, this type of detail, I'm not going to be able to drill down into this template. But here we have our employees, their start and end dates, their salaries, maybe their pension schemes, their bonus schemes. There's a top-down assumption there around the merit increases, which I can go in and override. So you can plan your employee or do your workforce planning by employee. You can do it by groups of employee. It's entirely up to you. And typically, customers will import their headcount as a starting point and then start to do, the modeling, play around with salaries, transfers, that type of thing, and even look at future headcount as well. So essentially, all of this is driving our various different lines in the income statement. So we're going to have drivers and assumptions around pension contributions, around the state taxes and national insurance taxes. All those various different drivers and assumptions are going to be used to generate these numbers in the income statement. So let's just close that out and pop back over here to the OPEX, back to OPEX template. But that's one example of driver-based. Another example down here, we've got some driver accounts. So I can select the driver I want, and then essentially my budget number is being generated for me. But it's just based on an Excel calculation. And again, I can't update that. That's something the template owner has put in. The only thing they want me to change are the drivers that I'm actually using to generate that number. I've got a travel tab, so I've got all my travel in here. So again, I can use those various different aspects there to come back into the OPEX planning tab to basically get to our travel expense number, as we can see there. So basically, again, you can tailor these templates to work the way that you want. Now, once we've done our OPEX plan, of course, we're going to save the data. In this particular instance, I'm not, but let's imagine we have. And then we can basically hit submit, and this will then move to the next stage in the process flow. And this task will become view only, so it'll move down to here. So again, I can still open up the OPEX planning template, but it will be in a view only mode. So in essence, and in terms of the templates you have and what you call them and what they're going to look like, that is really just down to how you're using Vena. So you may have a bunch of templates addressing your various different requirements around headcount planning, OPEX, revenue, CapEx, and so on. You could conceivably do all of those in one template if you wanted to, because again, it's about really tailoring your user experience. So determining how you want your users to interact with Vena. So here's just briefly a very, another quick example of a template. Here we're looking at our revenue plan. We're actually bringing in data from Salesforce in this instance, our CRM, but it could be any CRM. We've got our existing customers, clients with contracts. We can determine whether or not they're going to renew. But also going down here, we've got our pipeline as well. And all of that is basically feeding into our summary and even taking into account, aspects around the balance sheet. So when we need to recognize our revenue. So that's just obviously a very kind of quick overview there in terms of what you can do from a modeling perspective. And as I mentioned earlier on, everything is connected into the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow. So we're also able to allow you to do that cash flow modeling, whether that's a direct or indirect method. We can fully automate your balance sheet and your cash flow modeling. If that's something that you want to do. So just a few other things to talk about here is the what if thing. So what happens if we want to very quickly create a new scenario and maybe model out some different outcomes? So very quick and easy for us to create a new version or scenario in Vena. So let's just open this up here. Let's go to my scenario analysis. So let me just right click and I'm going to create a chart and I'm going to call that forecast. So now that I've created that new scenario, it's now available in all my reports and all my input templates, but at the moment it's empty. So I'm going to want to populate it, and I'm going to take my forecast and populate it into my reforecast. But also what I can do is essentially decide what data I want to copy between scenarios as well. So in this case, I'm going to take London from the forecast and put it into my reforecast. So you are able to select the slice of data you want to copy between scenarios. The other thing also, whilst we're here, this is where we see a good example of the alternate hierarchy. So here we have total org by function, and we can see London rolls up into sales and distribution, then into this top level. If I go down here and expand EU, you can also see London rolling up into the EU. So it goes back again to the point that you can have alternate hierarchies for your reporting and your modeling. So now that we've done that, let's pop back over here to the contributor. Let's just filter that by our reports, and we're going to go into this P&L variance reports, and I'm going to open it up for the reforecast. So when I get my options, so let's just run that for London, and yeah, let's just do that for sales and services. Make sure it's 2021, and there we have the reforecast. So that's available in that list there. So let's just bring that up. So here's a good example of where we can be comparing different versions with each other. So we have our actuals, we've got our reforecast, we're also comparing our reforecast to our forecast, which is quite useful in this particular instance. But we've got prior year, year to date, you may have year to go. It's entirely up to you. Now, unsurprisingly, the forecast and the reforecast is currently identical because we have, of course, just copied data between the two. But now what I want to do is I want to work out, okay, so, given the current situation with everything going on with COVID, we're going to push back recruitment for new starters. And I want to see what the impact is of doing that. So I'm going to go back over here. Let's open up the labor template. And in this particular instance, I am going to select reforecast because I can select it from that list. And then, as I said, we're going to change the start date for a number of our sales reps. So let's make sure we select the reforecast. And let's just bring back our headcount here. And then the bottom part, we've got those future headcounts. So there we can see a lot of very highly paid sales reps, which we're planning to bring on board, which are on a million. So now I could, of course, revise down those salaries, but in this instance, I'm going to say, actually, let's push back the recruitment of these sales reps to the 1st of Jan 2022. Just do Control C, Control V. Let's just save that data. So again, you can see it's committing those changes to the audit trail because every single data change we make is audit logged. And then I can pop back over here and then just refresh the data. And now you can see that we've pretty much halved our salary and wages costs just by pushing back the recruitment of those employees. But of course, you could do this on any part of the model. So I could maybe change some of my drivers and assumptions around my revenue plan. What happens if our exchange rates fluctuate, things like that. We can change all those. We can change them because they're saved on a version by version basis. So I'm not impacting or changing my forecast. I've just created this reforecast, populated it, changed some of those key elements around that just to do a what if. And once I've done this, I can keep this version, or I can delete it if I no longer want to keep it in Vena. But the point there is it's really quick and easy. I haven't got to go away and replicate all my templates. Very simple process. So let's just close that out, and then talking about the reporting side. So we've seen an example there of one of our reports, a variance report, but here we've got a corporate dashboard. So I can just open that up, and I'm actually going to run this at the group level. So when the options come, I can do that. So this is a type, this is a type of report you can push out to all of your managers in the business, for example. But what they're going to see in terms of what part of the business they can run it for will be down to their user profile. So Frank can run it for all entities, but let's say I'm the sales manager for London. I may only see London in that particular list. So let's just run it at the top level. We've got a whole bunch of various different tabs in here covering different aspects of our business, around the people side, around the customer side as well. So here we've got various different reporting aspects. I can use the standard filter feature in Excel. So maybe let's just bring in Jan and Feb, maybe for a particular product, maybe just for budget. And here's our reforecast as well, so we can bring that in if we want to. So, just very kind of comfortable. It's something I'm very used to. But again, if you've got your current list of reports, we can incorporate them into Vena. So operational, even so Vena internally, we bring in our employee satisfaction survey data into our people health dashboard. So managers can monitor how they're doing from an employee perspective. profitability for our customers. Now back over here to financial analysis, and I can go over here and I can start to look at that number, and I may want to drill down, so let's drill into that. So now here we have the various different departments. I'm just interested in maybe sales and services. I can select that, so there's London, and there's a number that we put in earlier on. And again, we can kind of drill right through to where that number came from. So using the drill saves, of course, we saved that a little bit earlier on, and there's our OpEx planning template, and we could jump to that. So it's very quick and easy for us to jump to different parts of the model if our security allows us to do so. So just a few other areas to cover off on the reporting, we can output into Word and PowerPoint. So the idea here is to automate that whole process for you. So let's just run that for 2021. Let's do it for the whole business and for the full year. So essentially what we do is, again, we can take your corporate templates, bring them into Vena, but we tag in those documents where we want charts and tables and commentary and numbers to appear. So it just automates that whole process. So the tables, the charts, this number, they're all in Vena. And this number here could appear 50 times in a Word or a PowerPoint report pack. Now, instead of having to do it or update it manually, we just tag where we want it to appear, which is a kind of one-off step when we create the template, and then we're done. And then we can run this for any period, any entity, and it will update those numbers accordingly, even bringing in commentary in there as well. So just to finish off then on the reporting, so it's great to have a bunch of reusable reports, but of course someone's always going to ask a question, and you might not have a report that kind of shows the answer to that. So we could use our ad hoc report writer. So this does require a 365 online subscription, but essentially it's a bit like a pivot table in terms of, let's just select my standard demo there, in that I can select dimensions and bring them into the rows and columns. So let's bring that down there. Let's maybe bring in the period there. Let's maybe go in and let's clear the selection, and let's maybe take net income, and let's just do the descendants on that and hit refresh. And now we can start to build out that report. And I can use zoom in to kind of drill down the time hierarchy in this case. I can, drill into transactions if I wish. Let's maybe bring in, the scenario. So let's bring in the scenario there, and let's compare that to the reforecast that we created a moment ago. So there it is. Again, it's there. It's available for us to compare against. So now we've added that in there, and maybe I want to send this off to someone and they're quite visual. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to get Excel to recommend the right type of chart to put in there. So let's do that. But once again, you've still got the ability to use the other nice features in Excel in terms of ideas and so on. But once we've created this report, we can save it. We can then email it off. If we send this to a user that doesn't have access to Vena, it will just be essentially a static Excel report there. So in demo, again, very kind of high level view. So we've looked at workflow, we've looked at how we can define any number of processes and walk our users through what they need to do when they need to do it. From a modeling perspective, you can pretty much model anything that you want, but what you have is a very connected model. So things may be driven off of other parts of the model there, but you've got the ability to kind of drill, analyze, drill through one part of the model to another part of the model, if your profile, your security profile enables you to do that. And then from a reporting and analysis perspective, you've got your kind of Excel outputs, but you've also got integration into the Word and the PowerPoint as well. So on that note, I'll now hand over back to Ian.
Andrew, thank you very much, and absolutely got us to time here, which is excellent. So I'm just waiting for control just to come back to me on the slides, which it has done now. So moving to a summary of just why do Vena Solutions and Shea Global fit so well together. So the joint Canadian heritage and shared Microsoft products focus is very unique, really. So that stands us in great stead, and it means there's a lot of high-level activity between our two organizations, and we're well joined together. But it doesn't stop there. So the type of customers that we go after, the focus that we have on geography is all well matched as well. So again, it's just like we're marching in lockstep, going after the same marketplaces and similar sorts of customers in those marketplaces. So both offerings scale pretty similarly. Absolutely complementary solution offering and fit from Vena to Shay. I mean, it's probably true to say that many people, will put their general ledger and their ERP in first. So you'll get your Dynamics 365 or other Dynamics products in there, and then your attention will turn to planning and budgeting. And in today's marketplace, a lot of people are having to very quickly generate scenario views of what's happening in their business, and to do that, in a matter of hours, not days. So having something like Vena at your fingertips in order to do that is just common sense, and is the only way to get through firing up all of those scenarios so that you can do a great job for your management. Both organizations really strong on customer success and focused on getting a delivery that's the right delivery first time, not sort of delivering over months and getting it wrong until you get it right. With both organizations, we want to get in there, get a smiling customer, and really get out and leave the customer perfectly happy. So we have, as Andrew touched on, we have got automated integration from Dynamics 365 into Vena, so we can automatically haul your actual data out of Dynamics into Vena. And both solutions share the same sort of reporting focus. So a great fit together. And therefore, Vena and Shay and Shay's customers go very well together. And what you've got in Vena is a single solution addressing planning and budgeting, financial close, and reporting as well. So what's not to like about that? Okay, so nothing more to say on that now, except to hand back to Jonathan and move us into questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you very much for the summary and the introduction. And also Andrew for the very comprehensive and detailed demonstration that you gave us of the product. It certainly is a beautiful looking product. You had some lovely looking dashboards there. So in terms of questions, we have some questions here, and the first question is, what version of Excel do you need to be able to work with Vena?
So Andrew, I think that might be one for you.
Yep, sure. So officially we support 2010 onwards. So essentially, as long as an Excel version is supported by Microsoft, because of course, you want to make sure you get on the latest security patches, things like that, we will support it. So yeah, 2010 onwards.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. And the next question, can Vena handle different company hierarchies?
Again, Andrew, I think, better than me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, you can. So in terms of the organization structure, you might have a legal structure, structure. You may have a July 2020 structure because you're reorging the business this month. And the key point there, and I guess the key differentiator between ourselves maybe and other tools, is it's not just about reporting. We can actually model against those alternate hierarchies as well. And it's actually not just the organization hierarchy. It could be, another dimension in Vena. So maybe your product hierarchy, for example, or your customer hierarchy. You may have multiple different iterations of those structures to meet various different reporting and modeling needs.
So perhaps customer groups or product groups, that type of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly that. And it's
Yeah,
very quick and
perfect.
easy to create them. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so the next question I think probably follows on, to be quite honest with you, from the previous, and it is, does Vena handle our business intelligence needs?
So the answer is yes. So Vena is a platform that does a variety of tasks. So you don't have to necessarily be building plans, budgets and forecasts in Vena in order to do reporting in Vena. So it's quite an okay way to start off with reporting and then maybe graduate to building your plans and budgets later. So in starting off your reporting, then you'll be bringing your actuals in from Dynamics 365, and then you might have built your plan or your forecasts in Excel, and you bring that data into Vena as well. And then you might bring other data from CRM systems, HR systems, whatever it happens to be, operational systems. You could bring any or all of that into Vena and then start to report on it and to build, KPI reporting and things like that, and to run that as your first activity, and then maybe grow to building plans, budgets, forecasts, and scenarios at a later time. So it just depends what's the most important task to perform within your organization.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Ian. And let's have a look. The next question we have is, how long does it take on average to implement Vena, and who does the work?
Right. Well, let's start with who does the work first. So normally the first application of Vena is built by either the Vena implementation team or one of the Vena partners that does implementation. Whoever does it, they will work very closely in conjunction with the customer. So in fact, it's a joint operation. So it's never just us building this, coming back to you and saying, ta-da, it's all ready. We will find tasks for the client to do. And lots of times that's in the area of integration, because the client knows this data, knows the source systems very well, and in the areas of reporting, because the client knows just what they want out of reporting. And we do training along the way so that the client can be trained and then start to build some of the reports under our guidance and then do it on their own. The objective being that by the time we finish that first application, the client is ready to run Vena themselves and to perform all the administrative tasks around security, adding new users, building new reports, changing the hierarchy or whatever. They should be able to do that all themselves.
Okay, so I think the key word there then is in collaboration.
Yeah, and then when it comes on to, how long does that take? It all depends on the size of organization and on the complexity of the data and just which you may be just doing reporting. So it can probably vary from about 20 days of build time to maybe say 40 days of build time for a medium-sized task.
Okay, no problem. So if we want to make changes to our Vena model at any time, do we have to come back to Vena to do this?
Absolutely not, but you can do. So we try to, the training is there to make our clients independent, but people change in the client, so somebody may need some more training, it may run out of skills, maybe too busy, whatever it happens to be. So you can either do these things yourselves or you can come back to us and we can help you along the way.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, and our final question, is Vena compliant with EU data protection? Where is the data held?
So I think on one of my slides, there was a clue there. For our North American customers, we hold our data in North America. For our EU customers, we hold our data in Ireland, and that's good for all the EU data protection requirements.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Ian. Well, that brings to a close the questions, but also today's session covering the Vena software. Finally, I'd like to thank you, Ian, and thank you, Andrew, for your time today, demonstrating the solution and giving us some background on Vena as a company, and of course to the marketing teams on both sides for helping to arrange this. So thank you very much. Thank you also to the participants that have taken the time out of their day to view this software. Following today's session, if you have any questions, you have any need for further help, or you would like to learn more, then please feel free to contact us using any of the details on the screen at Shay or at Vena. We both work in collaboration to address your needs. So please feel free to drop us a line or visit our website if you would like to learn more. All that remains is for me to wish you a good evening if you're over in Europe, or a good afternoon if you're across in Canada. Thank you very much for your attendance. Have a great day.